After years of hard work, I discovered that my boss had stolen my ideas and taken all the credit for himself, and I began searching for a way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. From the very first day I stepped into the company, I gave everything I had. I wasn't the most experienced employee, but I made up for it with determination, long hours, and a constant stream of new ideas. I stayed late at night drafting solutions, building strategies, and finding ways to improve the workflow. While others left the office, I remained behind, convinced that all this effort would one day pay off. At first, I believed my boss valued me. He often came by my desk, asking for updates on projects, nodding as I explained my concepts. He would say things like, "Good job, keep pushing forward. This is exactly what we need." His words gave me a sense of hope. I thought, maybe he sees my potential. Maybe he'll help me grow. But then came the first big presentation. It was a project I had spent weeks perfecting, pouring every ounce of creativity into it. I sat there in the meeting room, expecting at least some acknowledgement. Yet when my boss began presenting, I froze. Every slide, every idea, every strategy were mine. He spoke with confidence, like it was his own brilliance, while I sat in the corner, invisible. The higher-ups applauded, praising his innovation, his leadership. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe he was nervous and forgot to credit me. Maybe it wouldn't happen again. But it did. Again and again. Each project I touched turned into his victory. And each time I watched as my role was erased a little more. What hurt the most wasn't just the theft of my ideas, it was the feeling of being silenced, of being trapped in the shadows while someone else basked in the spotlight. Colleagues began to look at him as some kind of genius, while I became just another employee. I started questioning myself. Was I too quiet? Too naive? Should I have spoken up earlier? But then I remembered he was my boss. If I challenged him, I could lose everything I had worked so hard for. The anger grew inside me like a storm. Nights became restless. I replayed every meeting in my head. Every moment he used my words as if they were his. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and powerless. But beneath all that pain, something else started to grow. A fire, a determination. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I had to find a way to prove myself. A way to take back my work without destroying my future. But the question was, how? That was the beginning of my plan. The realization that my boss had been stealing from me for so long burned in my chest. But anger alone wouldn't solve anything. I needed a strategy. I couldn't just walk into his office and accuse him. He had power, connections, and influence. If I made the wrong move, he could easily turn the tables on me, painting me as a bitter, ungrateful employee. So I began to observe. I paid close attention to how he operated, how he presented himself, and most importantly, how he stole. He had a pattern. He'd casually ask me about the progress of a project, pretending to check in. But really, he was gathering details. Then during meetings, he would twist my words, reframe my solutions, and deliver them with authority. It was calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. I realized that if I wanted to expose him, I couldn't just rely on my word. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something that even he couldn't talk his way out of. That's when I started documenting everything. Every draft I created, I saved under my name with timestamps. Every email exchange I carefully archived, even in casual conversations. I began keeping notes. Who was present, what was discussed, and when. At first, it felt almost paranoid, like I was preparing for war. But as the days went by, I began to see the importance of it. Slowly, I was building a wall of evidence brick by brick, and while I did this, I kept playing my role as the loyal employee. I didn't confront him. I didn't let my frustration show. In fact, I pretended to be more cooperative than ever. If he asked for updates, I gave them. If he wanted details, I explained them. But deep down, every time he took credit for my work, I knew I was one step closer to exposing the truth. But something unexpected happened along the way. I began to notice how others in the office looked at me. Some of my colleagues whispered things like, "Why doesn't he ever speak up?" Or, "He works so hard, but no one knows it's him." It stung, but it also gave me strength. They knew. Maybe they didn't say it openly, but they could see what was happening. One day, after another meeting where my boss shamelessly presented my proposal as his, a colleague quietly slipped me a note. It said, "You deserve the credit. Don't let him keep taking from you." That tiny gesture lit something inside me. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't alone. People could see the truth. And with that realization, my plan grew bolder. It was no longer just about gathering evidence. It was about timing, about waiting for the perfect moment when the truth would cut the deepest. So I kept working, kept documenting, and kept smiling to his face. He thought he had me under control, that I was too afraid to ever stand against him. But little did he know. I was preparing for the day when everything he built on my back would come crashing down. As the weeks went by, my secret collection of evidence grew larger. Every file, every message, every draft with my name and timestamp became another weapon in my arsenal. But I knew that evidence alone wouldn't be enough. If I confronted my boss directly, he would deny everything and twist the story in his favor. He was a master manipulator, and I couldn't underestimate him. So I began to focus on something else: the people around him. My boss thrived on perception. He survived because everyone believed in his image of being a visionary leader. If I could crack that image in front of the right people, his power would crumble. I started to prepare in silence. Whenever he asked me for updates, I would give him incomplete details, just enough to keep him confident, while keeping the real breakthroughs to myself. It was risky, but I wanted him to walk into his own trap. At the same time, I began to build subtle alliances with my colleagues. I didn't openly tell them what was happening, but I started involving them in my work more often. I'd share early, drafts with them, ask for feedback, and copy them in emails. That way, they would see who was actually doing the work. Slowly, I noticed their attitude shift. Their eyes lingered on me longer during meetings, as if they were beginning to connect the dots. One night, as I was leaving the office late, I overheard two managers talking in the hallway. They were discussing the latest project, one of my projects that my boss had taken credit for. One of them said, "It's strange. I never see him working on these things, yet somehow he always has all the answers during meetings." That comment stuck with me. The cracks in his facade were beginning to show. People were starting to doubt him, even if they didn't say it out loud. But I couldn't rush. I knew that if I exposed him too early, without the right stage, the impact would be weak. I needed a bigger moment, something public, undeniable, and powerful enough to destroy the illusion he had built for years. So I waited. I worked harder than ever, but this time with a sharper purpose. I crafted new ideas not just for the company, but as bait. I wanted to see if he would take them, if he would try to pass them off as his own again, and of course he did. Within days, he began preparing a new presentation filled with my concepts, my designs, my vision, but what he didn't know was that this time, I was ready. The day of the big presentation arrived. My boss walked in, confident as ever, ready to steal the spotlight once again. He began speaking, presenting my work as though it were his masterpiece. But this time, I didn't stay silent. I stood up, calmly laid out my documents, emails, and drafts, each one proving that the ideas were mine. The room fell silent. All eyes shifted from him to me. In that moment, the truth was undeniable, and that's how our story ends today. But in the world of Max Fables, every story carries a lesson and leaves a mark. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming tales. Here, stories truly come to life.